For 30 winters, a lone trapper named Eli Bickford walked over frozen rivers that swallowed stronger, faster men whole. Not because he was lucky, but because he could read winter ice the way you and I read a page. Before I take you out onto that ice with him, if these forgotten stories are the kind you came here for, subscribe to The Cold Frontier for the next forgotten story of surviving the cold. Now, a gray January morning, north of the St. Croix, two men stand at the edge of a river white as bone. The younger one is done waiting. He steps out fast, boots crunching, sure of himself because the surface looks solid enough to hold a wagon. Eli opens his mouth to call him back, one breath too late. That milky white ice, the kind full of trapped air and old snowmelt, gives way under him like rotten bread. No crack, no warning, just gone. And Eli doesn't run. He can't. Running would put him under too, so he drops. He kneels on the ice and spreads himself flat, arms wide, weight thinned out across the sheet, and he watches a man he knew slip beneath a lid of white with nothing he can do about it. That is the morning Eli learned the one lesson that carried him through 30 winters. The ice that looks safest is the ice that kills you. If you've ever stepped onto a frozen pond and felt your gut tighten for no reason, you could hold on to that feeling. Because Eli would tell you it just saved your life. So let's go back and follow how he learned to read it. It starts with color. That's the first thing the old trappers taught and the first thing that keeps you alive. Eli learned to trust dark ice over bright ice, and it goes against everything your eyes want to believe. Clear, black ice, dark, glassy, the kind where you can look straight down and see the water moving beneath your boots. That is the strongest ice on the river. It looks the most frightening. It froze slow, froze pure, no air, no snow worked into it. Black ice holds a grown man on 4 inches, 4 fingers of the stuff, and you can walk. The pretty ice is the liar. Milky white ice, gray ice, ice with a chalky bloom across the top, like frost on a window pane. That's the honeycombed stuff. It froze fast, or it froze full of trapped air and packed snow, and underneath it's rotten with 1,000 tiny hollows. Beautiful and deadly. Look at the ice in your mind's eye right now. Is it clear and black, or milky and white? One holds you, one buries you. But here's the part that took Eli years to swallow. Color alone isn't enough, because the ice that betrays a man doesn't always look wrong. Sometimes it looks perfect, dark, honest, exactly what you'd trust, and it's still a grave with a lid, so color can lie. And Eli learned to trust something more than his eyes. The sound the river made under his feet. A sharp, racing crack meant one thing. A dull, hollow thud underfoot meant another. And the difference between those two sounds was the difference between walking home and going under. So he walked with a long ash pole, and he listened. Tap ahead, step, tap ahead, step. He never once trusted a stride he hadn't sounded first. Foot by foot, he read the whole sheet by ear, the way you'd read a face for a lie. A sharp, high crack that races out ahead of you. That ice is talking, and it's telling you to stay. It's flexing. It's holding. That crack means the sheet has spring in it, and spring means life. But a dull, hollow thud underfoot. A sound like a drum with no answer. That's air and rot below. That's the river wearing a solid face and lying to you straight. Say it back to me. Crack that race as you stand. Thud like a drum, you run. Get those two sounds straight in your head and the river can't fool you. And when Eli heard that thud, he didn't spin around. He didn't bolt, he slid, feet flat, backward, tracing the exact line he'd come in on, because that line already held him once. He spread his weight low and wide, and he never, ever lifted a boot. A lifted boot puts your whole self on one small patch, and one small patch of rotten ice will take you. Now here's where it gets harder, because color can lie, and sound can lie too. There are traps the river hides even when the ice looks right and rings right. And all of them come down to one thing: moving water. Moving water eats ice from underneath, where you can't see it and can't hear it until you're already through. So Eli read the banks. He never looked at just the ice. He looked at the shape of the shore, a bend, a narrow, anywhere the water got squeezed and had to hurry. Fast water down below means thin ice up top, thin in a way the surface won't confess. He learned to see the current by reading the land around it. Then there were the springs, warm seeps that push up from the riverbed and rot a hole from below, leaving nothing but a thin skin on top. And the snow lays a soft white blanket right over it. You can't see it. You'd walk onto it easy. A grave with a lid. That's what he called those, a grave with a lid. And the cruelest one of all, the middle of a wide river. The banks freeze thick and honest, so a man grows bold. He tests near shore, feels solid ice, and strides for the center like he owns it. But out in that middle the current never fully stops. The ice goes thin, right where he feels safest. This next one killed the strong and the fast more than any other. If you'd have strode for that solid-looking center, type center, so I know how many of us the river would have taken. And one day, the river gave Eli no choice at all. A blizzard closing in, the light going fast. No way around. A river he had to cross before dark or freeze on the wrong bank. Everything he knew about color, about sound, about the killers hiding below, all of it about to ride on one crossing with the snow already coming down. So he knelt at the edge and did the one thing that had carried him through 30 winters. He chips a test hole with his hatchet, right there near the bank, chipping down through the gray until the water showed dark below. And there it was, black ice, 4 fingers thick, clear, glassy, honest ice, the kind that froze slow and pure, the kind that holds a grown man without a whisper of complaint. He laid 4 cold fingers against that dark edge and measured it, and the river, for one small stretch, told him the truth. But 4 fingers at the bank is not a crossing. The far side was a long gray blur through the falling snow, and somewhere out in the middle, the current never slept. So Eli didn't take the straight line, the bold line, the line a younger, faster man would have walked to save 5 minutes and lose his life. He followed the pale shadow of the shore ice, the band that hugs the bank where the water runs slow and lazy and the sheet freezes thickest, crooked, patient, hugging the edge the way a cat hugs a wall. He gave up the short path on purpose because the short path was the one the river was waiting on, and he stayed off the snow. You'd think the drifts would be the safe part, soft, white, smooth as a made bed. They're the worst part. Drifted snow lays a blanket over the ice and keeps the cold from reaching it, so the sheet underneath stops growing, goes soft, goes rotten. That smooth white drift is the same trap that took the young man under. So Eli read the bare, scoured ice where the wind had swept it clean, and he stepped where he could see, one pole tap at a time. That's how a wide river gets crossed. Tap. A sharp crack racing out ahead of him, the sound of ice that flexes and holds. Slide the feet, never lift them. Tap again. Another clean crack. He never once struck out for the center, that wide, bright middle where a man feels safest and the current keeps the ice thin as a lie. Crack after holding crack, sliding, listening, the wind rising at his back and the light almost gone. And then his boot found gravel, the far bank. snow on his shoulders, breath frozen in his beard, standing on solid ground where stronger, faster men had gone straight to the bottom. He didn't run. He listened. And that's the whole secret. The men who hurried are under the ice, and the man who listened is standing on the far bank. He walked up through the pines to his cabin, broke the ice from his beard, builds his fire, and lives. One more winter, laid on top of the 30, the window glowing gold while the blizzard screamed itself out against the logs. That was Eli Bickford. Not lucky. Never lucky. He read the color, clear and black, not milky and white. He read the sound under a long ash pole. He knew every trap the river hid, and he had the patience to let it speak first. Next time you stand at the edge of anything frozen, remember Eli. Clear and black, slow and low, and let the river tell you before you trust it. That kind of knowing was almost lost. Stay by the fire with me, and I'll tell you the next forgotten story of surviving the cold.